Before Israel entered the land God had promised them, the people gathered at Mount Sinai, where Moses delivered one final set of instructions from the Lord. These were not presented as suggestions, but as the terms of the covenant between God and the nation he had rescued from slavery in Egypt. God began by making it clear that Israel was never to worship idols. They were not to carve statues, set up sacred pillars, or place engraved stones in their land for people to bow before. They were to worship only the Lord because He alone was their God. They were also commanded to keep the Sabbath days and to treat God's sanctuary with deep respect. Then God explained what life would look like if the people remained faithful. If they carefully obeyed His laws and lived by His commands, He promised to send rain at the right times. Their crops would grow well, their fruit trees would produce abundantly, and harvest season would be so successful that they would still be gathering one crop when it was time to plant the next. Food would be plentiful, and everyone would have enough to eat while living safely in their own land. Peace would settle over the nation. The people would be able to lie down at night without fear because no one would threaten them. Dangerous wild animals would disappear from the land, and war would not pass through their borders. If enemies attacked, Israel would defeat them. God said that 5 Israelites would chase 100 enemies, and 100 Israelites would send 10,000 fleeing. Their enemies would fall before them in battle, because God Himself would be fighting for His people. God also promised to bless their families, the population would grow, and He would keep His covenant with them. Their harvest would be so abundant that they would still have food stored from previous years when the next harvest arrived, forcing them to clear out the old supplies to make room for the new. More importantly, God promised to live among them. His tabernacle would remain in their midst, and He would not reject them. He said He would walk among them, be their God, and they would be His people. He reminded them that He was the God who had brought them out of Egypt, broken the chains of their slavery, removed the heavy yoke from their necks, and allowed them to walk as free people. After describing the blessings of obedience, God warned them about the consequences of turning away from Him. If the people refused to listen, rejected His laws, hated His commands, and broke His covenant, the blessings would disappear. Instead, God said terror would come upon them. Disease would spread through the nation. Illnesses would weaken their bodies, rob them of their sight, and fill them with sorrow. They would plant crops, but their enemies would harvest and eat the produce instead. God would no longer stand with them. Their enemies would defeat them. Those who hated them would rule over them, and fear would become so great that they would run away even when no one was chasing them. If they still refused to repent after those warnings, God said the punishment would become 7 times more severe. Their pride would be broken. The skies would become as hard as iron, refusing to give rain, while the ground would become like bronze, too dry to produce crops. They would work hard but accomplish nothing, because the land and the trees would stop producing food. If they continued to oppose God, another wave of judgment would come. Wild animals would roam the land, killing their children, destroying their livestock, reducing the population, and leaving the roads deserted because people would be too afraid to travel. If those disasters still failed to change their hearts, God said He would personally oppose them. Punishment would increase again. Foreign armies would invade with swords to enforce the broken covenant. When the people gathered inside their fortified cities for protection, disease would spread through the crowded population, and eventually they would be handed over to their enemies. Food would become so scarce that 10 women would share one oven just to bake enough bread for their households. The bread would be carefully weighed and rationed, yet no one would be satisfied because there would never be enough to eat. If the people still refused to return to God, His anger would grow even greater. The suffering would become so severe that famine would drive people to eat the flesh of their own sons and daughters. Their places of idol worship would be destroyed. Their carved images would be torn down, and their own dead bodies would lie among the broken idols they had trusted instead of God. God declared that He would reject such rebellion. Their cities would be reduced to ruins. Their places of worship would become empty and abandoned. God would no longer accept the pleasing aroma of their offerings because their hearts had turned away from Him. The land itself would become desolate, so devastated that even the enemies who occupied it would be shocked by what they saw. The people would then be scattered among foreign nations. Even after they were driven away, God said the sword would continue to follow them. Their homeland would remain empty, and their cities would lie in ruins. During the years that Israel lived in exile, the land would finally receive the rest it had been denied. The Sabbath years that the people had failed to observe while living there would finally be fulfilled because no one would be farming the land. It would rest for as long as it remained empty. Those who survived the invasions and exile would not find peace in foreign lands. Fear would settle deep into their hearts. Even the sound of a leaf blowing in the wind would make them panic and run as though someone were attacking them. They would stumble over one another while fleeing, even when no enemy was present. They would lose all confidence and have no strength to stand against those who opposed them. Many would die among the nations where they had been scattered, and those who remained would slowly waste away because of their own sins and the sins passed down from previous generations that they continued to practice. Yet the covenant did not end there. God said that if the people finally admitted their own sins as well as the sins of their ancestors, confessed that they had been unfaithful, acknowledged that they had opposed him, accepted that he had rightly brought them into enemy lands, humbled their stubborn hearts, and accepted the punishment for their wrongdoing, then everything would begin to change. At that point, God promised he would remember the covenant he had made with Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. He would also remember the land itself. Although the land would remain empty for a time and enjoy the Sabbath rests the people had denied it, Israel's suffering would have accomplished its purpose because they would have accepted the consequences of rejecting God's laws. Even while they were living in foreign lands, God promised he would not completely reject them. He would not destroy them entirely or cancel his covenant with them because he remained the Lord their God. For the sake of their ancestors, he would remember the covenant he made when he publicly brought Israel out of Egypt before the surrounding nations. His purpose had always been the same, that he would be their God and they would be his people. These were the laws, judgments, and covenant requirements that the Lord established between himself and the nation of Israel at Mount Sinai through Moses. They served as both a promise of blessing for faithfulness and a warning of the consequences that would follow if the covenant was abandoned.